Hey everyone, going to do a quick rundown of the GBDmake's cart that we created and how we actually got this ROM to work and all some of the behind the scene things that are happening. First thing you don't even notice is when it loads up, it does a quick check to see if the hardware that you're running is color capable. If that's the case, then it will allow you some extra options with a palette, which we can access by pressing up or down on our actual cart. This was a fun little nod to Frank Trifaldi from the Video Game History Foundation. The original black and white is what GBDmake's uses in their palette, but we can go to a more lower contrast black and white, Nintendo Internal's original palette. What we have is a Final Fantasy Adventure Switch port, and it's a bit more desaturated, and the Trifaldi adjusted palette. There's also the original GBStudio palette, which is a little bit more blue in tinge. And it's actually my favorite to present on. This, of course, only works with color. For other, you're using a regular Game Boy or something else, it will give you just the standard 4-color, which you can manipulate with your device. So we're going to go ahead and enter the gallery and look at some of the works that are created. Now, the secret to this and how this works is that we are actually using GBStudio 3 and its logo mode. What logo mode allows you to do is actually access all 360 tiles on screen instead of the normal limited 256. And that gives you a lot more graphical detail, but with the limitations of no text and very limited other interactivity and how things can work. I'm going to highlight some of my favorite screens and how they could actually work with GBStudio. This has an excellent interface with the UI at the bottom and even those attack and item and run. Those can potentially be done with palette swaps or just moving some actors around. And I've noticed that there was a couple of games that were released on GB Compo 21 that actually utilized an UI similar to this, which was very nice. This could totally be done with GBStudio as well too. Mind you, the large character sprite would probably have to wait until, again, GBStudio 3 with meta sprites. But definitely that background with a little bit of simplification, totally doable with the tiles and how they're laid out. Doki Doki Literature Club, even though there are going to be some elements of the original game that would be difficult to represent within a port, the whole interactive narrative or visual novel style is definitely doable in GBStudio, and in fact I use that myself for my Ace Attorney style. We'd have to be careful with the number of tiles we use up top, but that nice little text box at the bottom is definitely possible, and you could either do some tricks with the backend engine to have the title or the name of a person come up. You can also use actors to do that as well too. Gregory Horror Show has some excellent large sprites as well too. This would be cool. Now, the dialog box would be very difficult to render within GBStudio. There might be other ways of doing it with just the background image, but in this representation, it would be a little bit difficult to have as a standard dialog box. Hat in Time looks great. Background enemy like that might be challenging, but what I love about this is, again, the UI at the bottom would be totally doable. And I love how just the lighter colors are reserved for the background. It makes the foreground objects and characters really pop out. And even here on the inverse, where there's only a few colors in the background or it's mostly dark, really helps the characters pop out in front with that nice little white outline. A similar technique is used in Hollow Knight, where the character has this nice little white outline and helps just define where they are in front of the palette or in front of the background. Now, the number of colors in the sprites would be challenging because you still have to work within the 4 or 2-bit per pixel. One of those particular palettes are used for transparency. It is possible to do 4 colors with some of the GBStudio 3 features. Once again, a cutscene like this is totally viable because it's mostly going to be background. And something like this would be doable as well too. We'd have to figure out how to get the background boss to animate a bit with some tiles or with some sprites. But this perspective I haven't really seen in many GBStudio games, but it can definitely be usable in order and actually have it look like they're pseudo 3D moving. I definitely know a few games like Shapeshifter that have sprites that kind of shrink into the background. Paper Mario looks great. Definitely be able to do some of that. Actually, this is a good one to point out that in some palettes, they work a bit better, like the grayscale palettes, but once you get into the green scale, Mario kind of gets lost in the background a little bit there. Something to keep in mind. And Super Mario Sunshine, this is again something that would be very practical to implement in GBStudio in terms of how the UI is laid out. Those 4-color coins could be possible in 3.0, but you'd have to probably do some tricks in 3 to make it look like that, or in 2. And that's it. Really simple interface. You can get to a palette selector here and get more information about what the actual palettes are doing and get back to your original screen with that. But I'm glad a lot of people liked it. There was a lot of feedback that I got that they enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see GBDemakes come out with some actual ROMs as well. I've seen them doing some work on there, and looking forward to it.